The rain had been falling steadily since 6:47 p.m., drumming against the windows in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. Clara sat by the kitchen counter, tracing the rim of her coffee mug, lost in thought. She had been waiting all week for an evening to herself, a rare quiet night in a house usually full of chatter and laughter. But tonight, silence had taken over until the doorbell rang. Her heart skipped. It was unusual for anyone to show up unannounced, especially so late. She glanced at the clock. 7:15 p.m. The rain streaked the window, making her hesitate before opening the door. Standing there was a tall man, soaked from the rain, holding a small bag in one hand. His hair clung to his forehead, and there was a hint of something familiar in his posture. "Clara. It's me. Jordan," he said, and she immediately recognized him as her husband's old college friend. "Jordan?" she asked, surprised, stepping aside to let him in. The warmth of the house hit him instantly. "I wasn't expecting anyone tonight," she added. "I know," he replied with a nervous smile. I needed to talk to someone, and Mark said I could come here. Hope it's okay." Clara nodded, though unease twisted in her stomach. There was something in his voice, hesitation, maybe worry, that made her alert. She handed him a towel to dry off, silently wondering what had brought him here alone. They settled in the living room, the fire casting a soft glow around them. Clara offered him some tea, and he accepted, rubbing his hands together as if to shake off the chill. Jordan didn't speak immediately, just stared into the fire for a long moment, as if gathering courage. "You look different," Clara said gently, breaking the quiet. Jordan's eyes met hers, and she noticed shadows under them, a weariness she hadn't seen in the photos Mark had shown her. "Life's been complicated," he finally admitted. "I didn't mean to drop in out of nowhere. It's just, there's something I need to confess." Clara felt a knot tighten in her chest. She had learned over the years that when someone said "I need to confess," it rarely meant anything small or simple. Yet, she offered a soft smile. "It's okay. Sit. Tell me." Jordan took a deep breath. "It's about Mark, about us." His words hit her in a way she hadn't expected. A sudden tension filled the room, like a storm approaching faster than the one outside. Clara braced herself. "Us?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes. Mark's always been generous, supportive, but there's been something he hasn't shared with you," Jordan said, his voice quiet, careful. Clara's stomach flipped. She had married Mark after knowing him for years. She thought she knew everything about him. Jordan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I didn't know if I should say anything, but I can't just keep quiet. He's hiding a part of his life that I think you deserve to know." Clara's mind raced. She sipped her tea slowly, buying time, but inside, a storm of questions brewed. What could Mark possibly be hiding? Their life had seemed ordinary, routine, the kind of comfortable life most people wished for. But the look in Jordan's eyes told her this wasn't a small revelation. The rain intensified outside, tapping sharply against the roof, almost like it was echoing the growing tension inside the house. Clara placed her mug on the table, her hands trembling slightly. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll listen." Jordan swallowed hard, seeming to gather strength from somewhere deep. "It's not about anything bad, not about cheating or anything like that. It's just, Mark has a history you don't know about. Something that could change how you see him, or at least how you understand why he is the way he is." Clara felt a mix of relief and curiosity. Not bad, but important. What kind of story could change everything without being harmful? She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on him. "Go on," she whispered. Jordan hesitated, then began to unravel the story, his voice soft, careful, like he was threading through fragile glass. He told her about Mark's college days, the struggles he faced that he never shared, the people he lost contact with, the mistakes he regretted. The room seemed smaller, the fire warmer, but the words pressed around her like a weight. Clara listened, spellbound, amazed at how someone she thought she knew completely could have carried such hidden chapters. Each word felt like it was peeling back a layer she hadn't known existed. At some point, she realized she wasn't just listening to Jordan's story about Mark, she was seeing Mark through new eyes. She felt a mixture of tenderness, shock, and compassion. Her husband had fought battles she'd never imagined. And now, those battles, once secret, were being shared in her living room on a rainy evening with someone else. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The words lingered, almost like a pause in the narrative of her life. Clara sipped her tea, her mind spinning, as Jordan continued. But before he could finish the next part of his tale, the lights flickered, and the rain outside pounded harder. Clara froze. There was a knock at the door. Her heart jumped. She had no idea who it could be. Jordan looked at her, startled as well. The unexpected visitor would either change the night entirely or bring more truths to light than they were ready for. Clara's hand hovered over the doorknob, her pulse quickening. The knock came again, slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. She exchanged a glance with Jordan, who seemed equally tense. Neither of them had expected another visitor tonight. "Should I?" Clara began, but Jordan shook his head slightly. "Let's see who it is," he said. His voice carried a quiet steadiness, though she could see the worry in his eyes. Clara opened the door slowly. Outside stood a young man, maybe in his late 20s, soaked from the rain. His expression was nervous, and he carried a small envelope clutched tightly in his hands. "Hi. I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "I was told someone here could help me." Clara's brow furrowed. "Help you with what?" she asked gently, stepping aside to let him in. Jordan leaned back on the couch, watching the scene unfold. I have a message for Mark," the young man said, his voice shaking slightly. "It's important. From someone he hasn't spoken to in years." Clara's stomach tightened. She took the envelope, feeling the weight of whatever it contained. "Mark isn't here right now," she said softly. "But you can leave it, and we'll make sure he gets it." The young man hesitated. "No, it's more than that. I think he should know in person." He glanced at Jordan, recognition flickering in his eyes. Jordan stiffened but didn't say anything. Clara felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. There was something in the way the man looked at Jordan, like they shared a secret, a history that she was only beginning to glimpse. "Why not tell me?" she asked, curiosity overcoming caution. "Maybe it's better if I understand what's going on." The man glanced at Jordan again, then nodded. "Okay. But it's complicated. And it's been a long time coming." Clara motioned for him to sit. He lowered himself into the chair, careful not to spill the water dripping from his jacket. The fire crackled, casting a soft glow across the three of them. Clara felt as if the room itself had transformed into a confessional, a place where hidden truths would finally be revealed. "All right," Clara said, her voice steady despite the tension curling in her chest. "Tell me." The man swallowed hard. "Mark and we went to college together. He was always someone you could trust, someone dependable. But there was an incident, something that changed both of our lives. I think he's tried to forget it, but it's still out there." Jordan's jaw tightened, and Clara noticed the subtle way his hands clenched. "What kind of incident?" she asked quietly. "It was an accident," the man continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing criminal, nothing bad in that sense. But it had consequences, big ones. And Mark has carried them alone for years." Clara felt her chest tighten. She had suspected that Jordan's story earlier hinted at deep, hidden struggles, but she hadn't expected another layer so soon. The room was heavy with anticipation. She could see the conflict in Jordan's eyes, the tension between wanting to protect the past and revealing the truth. "What happened?" Clara asked. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but she needed to know. The young man took a deep breath. "It was during our final year. There was a project, an important one, and someone got hurt. Mark was involved in the aftermath, tried to fix everything, but not everything could be fixed. We lost contact for years because of it. He thought it was better that way." Jordan finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "He's telling the truth," he said. "I've known pieces of it, but I've never shared the full story with Clara, because I wasn't sure how she would see him after." Clara's mind raced. She had always trusted Mark completely, but this revelation was reshaping her understanding of him, not in a negative way, but in a human, fragile way. The man in front of her was telling her about choices, consequences, and the weight of guilt carried silently over years. "You're saying Mark carried this alone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the young man replied. "And I think it's time he finally confronts it. Not just for himself, but for everyone it affected." The rain outside softened slightly, as if the storm itself was holding its breath. Clara felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. The layers of Mark's life she had never known were unfolding right before her, and somehow, Jordan's presence made it even more vivid. Jordan leaned forward. "Clara, I know this is a lot. I didn't want to scare you, but you deserve to know the full story about the man you married. He's carried more than you realize." Clara swallowed hard, feeling a swell of emotion. Her husband, the man she loved, had walked through fire and storm before they ever met, and she had no idea. She looked from Jordan to the young man, her heart pounding. "I need to see him," she whispered. "I need to understand it from Mark himself." The room fell silent. The young man nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "He's at home, waiting for a moment he's not sure will ever come. But tonight, maybe it can." Clara's mind spun with questions, yet a strange calm settled over her. There was a clarity in knowing the truth, even if it was heavy. And she realized that this night, this odd, rainy night, was the beginning of something she hadn't expected, a chance to see Mark fully, beyond the layers she had known. But before she could move, there was a sudden sound, a soft, almost imperceptible click from the hallway. Clara froze, her heart thudding in her chest. Someone was there, moving. Not the young man, not Jordan. Another presence, silent, watching. Clara's heart raced as the soft click echoed through the hallway. Her tea had gone cold in the cup she barely noticed. She glanced at Jordan and the young man, both frozen in alertness. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, waiting. "Did you hear that?" Clara whispered. Jordan nodded subtly, his eyes scanning the shadowed hallway. "Yeah, someone's here," he said cautiously. His voice was low, controlled, but Clara could hear the tension underneath. The young man shifted nervously in his seat. "It's probably nothing," he said, though his tone didn't convince anyone. "Maybe just the storm, something falling." Clara shook her head. "No, that was deliberate. Footsteps. Someone's moving in the house." The sound came again, faint but deliberate, a shuffle, a soft exhale. Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. She had spent years trusting the safety of her home, and now that trust felt fragile. Jordan rose slowly, moving toward the hallway. Clara followed instinctively, her curiosity stronger than her fear. The young man stayed seated, wringing his hands, his eyes darting between them. As they reached the hallway, Clara could see a shadow move near the stairwell. The faint outline of someone standing there, just out of reach of the warm glow from the living room. "Who's there?" Jordan's voice cut through the quiet. The figure stepped forward slowly, revealing itself. It was Mark. His coat was damp, hair slightly disheveled, but his eyes were steady. Relief and surprise collided in Clara's chest. She had expected hesitation, maybe a confrontation, but instead, it was him, her husband, standing there, real and present. "Mark," Clara breathed, stepping closer, unsure whether to embrace him or step back. Mark's eyes softened when they met hers. "Clara," he said quietly, "I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I should come tonight. But I think it's time." The young man handed him the envelope. Mark took it with a careful glance, opening it to reveal letters and notes tied together with a ribbon. Clara noticed the trembling in his hands as he read. "It's everything," Mark whispered. "All of it. The project, the accident, the fallout, the years of silence. Jordan told you some of it?" Clara nodded. "He started explaining tonight. And then," she gestured toward the young man, "this happened." Mark looked at him, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you. For coming. For trusting me to handle this after all these years." The young man nodded, relief mixed with lingering anxiety. Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had always loved Mark, but tonight she felt a deeper connection forming, one rooted in understanding, compassion, and the vulnerability he rarely showed. Mark sank onto the couch beside her, careful not to wet it with his damp coat. He removed it and set it aside, his gaze never leaving hers. "I wanted to tell you everything," he said softly. "But I was scared. I didn't want you to think less of me." Clara shook her head, her fingers brushing his. "Mark, nothing you've carried changes how I feel about you. It only makes me admire your strength more." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I carried this alone for so long because I thought it was my burden to bear. I didn't want to bring anyone else into it, especially you." Clara leaned closer, resting her hand on his. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Not with me. Not with anyone you trust." Jordan watched the scene quietly, a subtle smile tugging at his lips. He had been the bridge tonight, connecting past and present, helping the truth finally surface. And now, Clara and Mark were sharing a moment he had only imagined in his hopes. Mark opened his mouth to speak again, but the soft chime of the doorbell interrupted him. Clara frowned, glancing toward the entrance. The young man's brow furrowed too. "Not again," he muttered. The doorbell rang once more, distinct, insistent, and oddly urgent. Clara's pulse quickened. Who could possibly be visiting now, at this hour, when the night was already full of surprises? Mark looked at her, a shadow of concern in his eyes. "I don't know who that could be," he admitted. "I wasn't expecting anyone else." Clara moved toward the door, hesitant but compelled. She opened it to reveal another figure standing in the rain. This one was older, mid-40s maybe, with an air of authority and calm that contrasted sharply with the storm outside. "I'm sorry to intrude," the man said, his voice steady. "But I believe you need to hear this, all of you. There's something Mark must understand fully about the past, something that affects all of you." Clara felt a swirl of emotions: fear, curiosity, and anticipation. The night had already peeled back so many layers of her husband's life, and now it was offering another. The firelight flickered across the room, catching everyone's expressions: eager, anxious, and raw. Mark straightened, his jaw tight. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously. The man's eyes softened, and he held out a folder. "I was involved in the same incident years ago. I've been waiting for the right moment to come forward. I think that moment is now." Clara felt the air thicken. Tonight, she realized, was no ordinary night. It was the night truths long buried were finally stepping into the light, and she had a front row seat to everything. The rain outside had slowed to a soft drizzle, but inside, the tension had only grown. Clara, Mark, Jordan, and the two visitors all were poised at the edge of revelation, hearts pounding, unsure of what would come next. The man handed Mark the folder, and he took it with cautious hands. Inside were documents, old photos, and notes written in careful handwriting. Clara noticed how his fingers trembled slightly as he sifted through them. This is all connected to the accident?" Mark asked, his voice tight but steady. The man nodded. "Yes. You and I, and Jordan too, we were all connected in ways you might not remember clearly. I've kept track because I wanted you to fully understand what happened, without the distortions of memory or time." Clara leaned closer, curiosity mingled with concern. She could see the conflict in Mark's eyes, the weight of decades of guilt and silence pressing down on him. "I thought I had handled it," Mark said quietly. "I tried to fix everything, to make things right. But I never realized how much I was keeping from everyone, including you, Clara." Clara reached out, touching his arm gently. "You couldn't have known. You were doing what you thought was best. But now you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Jordan cleared his throat softly. "Mark, it's not just about guilt. It's about understanding, and maybe forgiveness, both from yourself and others." Mark glanced at him, a faint smile breaking through the tension. "I think I understand that now." The older man shifted, holding out a small envelope. "There's one more thing," he said. "Something you need to see before you can really move forward." Mark hesitated for a moment, then took it. Opening it, he found a letter written in his own handwriting, years earlier. It detailed a confession, a promise, and a plan he had made but never shared with anyone. Reading it now, he realized how much he had tried to protect himself by staying silent. Clara could see the flood of emotions crossing his face: regret, relief, and something else, a quiet acceptance. She squeezed his hand. "Mark," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. And I'm grateful, to all of you. Jordan, the young man, you, Clara, this is the first time in years I've felt like the truth is finally out, and maybe I can finally breathe." The young man shifted nervously. "I'm glad you're saying that," he said softly. "I was worried coming tonight, but I knew it had to be done." Clara's eyes met Jordan's. "Thank you," she said. "For being honest, for bringing the past into the open. It wasn't easy, but it matters." Jordan smiled faintly, his own tension easing. "It had to be done. You too deserve clarity. And now, you have it." The older man rose, preparing to leave. "I'll give you space," he said. "But remember, the past only has power over you if you let it. You've taken the first step toward freedom." Mark nodded, watching him go. The house felt warmer now, the firelight dancing in the corners, filling the spaces left by years of hidden burdens. Clara leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the quiet strength that had endured so much. For a moment, the rain outside felt distant, the storm had passed. But the night was far from over. Clara sensed that tonight, so many layers had been uncovered, yet there were still conversations, still revelations waiting in the quiet corners of the room. Mark finally set the letter aside. "Clara, I want to tell you everything. Not just what happened years ago, but the choices I made afterward, the moments I kept secret, everything that shaped me." Clara's heart swelled. "I want to hear it," she said. "I want to understand all of you, all of us." Jordan leaned back, his role in the night complete but his presence grounding. The young man had retreated slightly, giving them the space to connect, to bridge the gap between past and present. Mark took a deep breath. "It's going to take time," he said, "but I need you to know that I'm ready to be fully honest, with you and with myself." Clara smiled softly, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "Then we'll take that time together. Whatever comes, we face it together." Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The night was calm, almost serene. But inside the house, the air was charged with emotions: relief, tenderness, and the fragile beginnings of healing. Mark looked at her, his eyes shining. "I've carried so much, but now, I feel like the weight has lifted. And I want to share my life with you, every part of it, even the parts one thought I had to hide." Clara squeezed his hand. "I'm here. I've always been here. And I'll stay." The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows across the room. For the first time in years, Mark felt like he could exhale. He didn't need to pretend or hide anymore. Clara's presence, Jordan's honesty, and the courage of the young man had brought him to this moment. But as he looked around the room, he felt a subtle unease. There was still something lingering in the edges of the night, a memory unspoken, a truth not yet fully revealed. The night had begun with a simple visit, but it had grown into a night of revelations, and he sensed it wasn't quite finished. Mark sat back, the envelope and letter still on the table before him. Clara could see the lines of tension finally softening on his face, but there was still a quiet intensity in his eyes. He had shared so much already, yet she felt that he was holding one final piece, something he had waited years to say aloud. Clara reached for his hand, her thumb brushing over his knuckles. "You can tell me anything, Mark," she said softly. "Everything we've gone through tonight, nothing changes how I feel about you." Mark took a slow breath. "I need you to know the full story, Clara. The accident, the years of silence, the choices I made afterward, it all led me here. To you. To this life. I was afraid that if you knew, you'd see me differently." Clara shook her head, a gentle smile touching her lips. "Mark, I see you. All of you. The past, the mistakes, the hidden struggles, they don't scare me. They make me understand you better, and I love you even more for that." He looked at her, the weight of his emotions reflected in her eyes. "You have no idea how much that means to me," he whispered. "For so long, I carried this alone. I thought I had to, because no one could understand, and I didn't want to burden anyone. But now, I see that sharing it, letting it out, it changes everything. It frees me in ways I didn't think possible. Clara squeezed his hand. You don't have to be alone anymore. You never did. Jordan, sitting a little to the side, nodded. It's remarkable, isn't it? He said. How one night, one conversation, can peel back years of silence and bring people closer. You too. This is exactly what it should feel like: honesty, trust, and understanding. The young man, who had been quiet for most of the evening, spoke again. I'm glad I came tonight. I didn't know what to expect, but seeing the two of you face it together, it feels right. It feels like the past finally belongs where it should, behind you, not haunting you. Clara turned her gaze back to Mark, noticing the subtle tremor in his lips as he absorbed the truth. The house was quiet now, except for the soft crackle of the fire. It felt intimate, safe, and somehow sacred, a space where confessions, apologies, and love could coexist. I never wanted to hide from you, Mark said finally. Every choice I made, every secret I held, it was never to deceive. It was to protect, to survive, and to find a way to make things right without losing the people I care about. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. And now? She asked. Now, he replied, his voice stronger, calmer, I can be fully honest. With you. With everyone. And I can finally stop carrying the weight alone. I can be free. She leaned closer, resting her forehead against his. We're free together, she whispered. Whatever comes next, we face it together. You don't have to bear anything by yourself ever again. The firelight flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. It was a quiet, profound moment, two hearts aligning after years of hidden burdens. Clara could feel the deep trust growing between them, a trust that had been tested and strengthened in ways neither could have predicted. Mark looked around the room, at Jordan and the young man who had both played roles in this night of revelations. Thank you, he said simply. For your honesty, your courage, and for helping me face everything I've kept buried. I couldn't have done it alone. Jordan gave a small smile. Sometimes, it just takes one night, one conversation, to change everything. And it looks like tonight was that night for all of us. The young man nodded, rising to leave. I'll go now. You have what you need. And the rest, you'll face together, as a family. Clara and Mark watched him go, the soft click of the door echoing in the room. The storm outside had passed completely, leaving a calm night behind. The quiet felt different now, not empty, but full of possibility. Mark turned to Clara, his hand finding hers again. This night, it's changed me. Changed us. And I want to honor that, every day, with the honesty, love, and trust we share. Clara smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. We will, Mark. Every day. And we'll face the future, no matter what, together. For the first time in years, Mark felt completely unburdened. The secrets, the regrets, the fears, they no longer controlled him. He had been given the gift of understanding, of connection, and of love that was stronger than any hidden past. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the calm and warmth around them. Tonight had been extraordinary, filled with revelations, courage, and the fragile beauty of trust. They had faced the shadows of the past, and in doing so, had stepped into a light that felt brighter than anything either of them had imagined. As the fire flickered and the night stretched on, they sat together, hand in hand, hearts open, knowing that what had begun as a strange, unexpected visit had transformed into something unforgettable. A night of truth, healing, and deep, enduring love. And in that quiet, intimate space, they finally understood, love isn't just about the easy days. It's about weathering storms together, sharing burdens, and finding the courage to face every hidden truth, side by side. The rain had stopped, the storm had passed, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt full of hope. The night was theirs.